I believe any president would have it rough of the next coming 4 years.
Okay, thanks for the call. We're going to listen in for just a moment, and Mr. Perot may be coming up shortly. If not, we'll come back with more of your phone calls.
All around the country, you can see the signs. People stirring in the streets, with freedom on our minds. We've come to shape the future. Time to wait has passed. Came to find what we left behind and take our country back. We were once the greatest, red, the white, and blue. We always worked together to make the dream come true. Our dreams have been forgotten, lost by bureaucrats. They have a voice, they have a choice to take our country back. We came to get our country, came for the land we love, land we built with sweat and tears, defended with our blood. Though we all are different, there's nothing that we lack. So let's join our hands across the land and take our country back. You know we'll need a leader, someone that we can trust, who's going to listen to our needs, someone who's one of us. We need someone to guide us, get us right on track. Don't you know it's Ross Perot who will get our country back? Came to get our country, we came for the land we love, land we built with sweat and tears, defended with our blood. Though we all are different, there's nothing that we lack. So let's join our hands across the land and take our country back. Let's join our hands across the land and take our country back.
What a great rally! No PAC money, no tax dollars, and we didn't eat any $1,000 plate dinners either. It's that kind of effort and the kind of great people that you are that we need to pull this off and put Ross Perot in the White House. It's going to take great, courageous, strong people like Admiral James Bond Stockdale, who, while enduring the worst atrocities of being a prisoner of war, remained the finest example of a true leader. And Dr. James Bond Stockdale II, who, like his father and 3 brothers, has dedicated his efforts to being an educator. For the last 20 years, he has been as a teacher and an administrator, and an educator, a researcher, and a scholar. He has empowered thousands of Americans to make their own positive impact. And early on in his years, he became painfully aware of the inadequacies of our bureaucracy while he was watching his mother, Sybil, muster support for his father, who spent more than 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pride to introduce to you Dr. James Bond Stockdale II.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. What a proud day to be in Western Pennsylvania. Every person in this room knows who we have come to hear today. Each individual has been introduced to Mr. Perot in their own way. It falls to me to introduce him in a way no one else can, and I can do that. Many have asked how the friendship and affiliation between my dad and Mr. Perot started and grew. I will tell you only the very beginning of that story. It begins, interestingly enough, with a single mother. A strong-willed, solid, patriotic single mother. You see, Ross knew Mom long before she knew Dad. Sometimes single motherhood occurs as a result of Americans called on to do their duty. Some single mothers are created by the ultimate sacrifice of a loved one. This fact is frequently overlooked by those who don't care or who don't know any better. When Dad was shot down in '65, Sybil Stockdale became the single mother of 4 sons, and as the eldest of the 4, I watched her anguish and courage at different times, with amazement, with terror, and with sadness. By 1969, 4 years later, Mom had learned from intelligence sources that Dad was kept in solitary confinement, spending 18 hours a day in leg irons and subjected to random as well as regular sessions of beatings, humiliation, and torture. Still, Sybil Stockdale and hundreds of wives and relatives who had come to her side by this time was told by her government that silence was the best policy. To say that my mother was disillusioned by 1969 would be an understatement. She had butted heads with the bureaucracy in Washington for 4 years. No reply. A non-responsive Pentagon filled with many of my father's contemporaries did not respond. A media bent on covering America's equivocation and ambivalence in a guerrilla war would not hear her pleas for help. There was no coverage. Then, one evening, one man called from out of the blue. My memory of it is so vivid. I'd finished high school here in Pennsylvania and was attending college in Ohio. 18 years old when I flew to our house in California for Christmas, 1969. It was the 5th year I was to play Santa Claus for my 3 younger brothers. When I returned home, Mom said she needed me to care for my brothers overnight while she went up to LA, to Los Angeles. She was going to meet the caller, a man who had chartered 2 jets and had filled them with supplies. He was going to try to fly them to Hanoi and distribute cargo to Americans held captive. It was a bold plan, and it brought what limited media attention local reporters could afford. You see, in 1969, men missing in action was too painful and ambiguous a topic for the nightly news. It was too hard to cover, too messy, too complex. Mom left home that evening with her eyes dim from years of frustration. The ideals for which my father was daily sacrificing so much had given way in Washington to a self-serving bureaucracy. Our government had forsaken her husband, my father. She returned the next morning, and as we started to fix breakfast, I asked her how the visit had gone. She looked up at me, literally with tears in her eyes, and I must tell you, I once again saw a fire behind those tears that had been absent for countless months. She said, "Jimmy, I can't help but believe that with men like Mr. Perot in our country, your father will one day come home safely." Ladies and gentlemen, when you're 18 years old and you see your mother's once again hopeful eyes well with tears, and you look across the kitchen at your brothers aged 14, 10, and 6. You never, ever forget the man who gave your family that hope. My message today is that one man called, not because he had to, but because he cared. One man called to help free my father from the fiery furnace of a communist torture prison. Here's the sad truth. Today, 23 years later, almost all real working Americans you've heard from today are themselves in prison, imprisoned by debt and by greed. Today, Americans are chained by the deeds of their own undoing. Traditional politicians only offer us a choice between, as was said earlier, the lesser of evils. But good people should have good people to lead them and not a compromise of deceit. Today, the dream of America's future unravels. Today, our dream unravels because of irresponsibility and a lack of leadership. Big party politicians have run our ideals, our economy, and our national integrity into the ground, and one man has called one long-distance call across America last February, piercing the night air like a laser. One call from someone I know, someone who was a good man when no one was watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad to see so many of the faces I've seen in smaller groups here this evening. I've seen you in the months before and spoken to you in your courthouses and in various places, your homes, your lumber yards. As I've traveled the region and spoken to community groups, I've again seen tears in people's eyes. The flicker of hope behind those tears tells me that they will answer the call. They answer the call by saying, we reject being forsaken by our elected officials. We want responsibility, they say. We want to be proud and strong again. We want our children to realize what we have known, and we will sacrifice to preserve the American dream. We want leadership we can look to with admiration and respect. We want a good example. We want honor to prevail over political expediency, and we want someone who will level with us and deliver not empty promises and personal ambition, but deeds of substance and a reclaiming of the spirit that founded this great land. Big party machine. Ladies and gentlemen, this family, big party machine politicians, we know, just don't cut it anymore because Americans have answered when one man has called. People responded at first simply with his name, Ross, 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 they said. What began quietly last February grew with stunning constancy and reverberation. In the spring it was louder, Ross, Ross, and during the quiet days of summer, men and women continued against the odds, working to reassure that their vote counted for something they believed in. And in the fall, it has grown louder and louder still. Ross, Ross, you can see the hope now glistening in the eyes of people. That whisper from last winter has grown louder and louder to a crescendo call in autumn. We answer that call today with the name that crossed our lips as a whisper, and now as a rally cry. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present the next President of the United States, Mr. Ross Perot.
Thank you very much. Now, God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let's go. Let's go. It's a privilege to be with you. It's a privilege to be with you. This room is filled with love. And I want to make it clear, and I know you share this feeling. I love this great country. We all love this great country. You and I are here because we cherish the principles on which this great country is founded, and we don't like to see those principles violated. We've got all the volunteers from Lehigh County watching over television. We wish you could be here with us, but we're glad you are with us over television, and thank you very much for all you're doing. Surely all of you know that my lovely wife, Margot, was born in Pittsburgh. Now, she was born in Mercy Hospital. Is that still here? Okay. And she grew up in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, a few miles away. Now, a standing family joke is that our children are half-breeds because their mother is a Yankee. That's in Texas, see, because mother's a Yankee. And every Mother's Day, when they were growing up, they would come together and sing, "Greensburg must be heaven, because my mother came from there." Did you see the TV show about Margot and the children? Do you think she would make a great First Lady? Do you think that those 5 great children that she raised would be good role models for your little ones to look up to? Well, that's the good news. The bad news is to get them, you're stuck with me. Okay, thank you. We've got to rebuild our great country. We've got to make our country the envy of the world again. And I can't sleep until the words "Made in the USA" once again become the world standard correctly. Right here, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is proof we can rebuild, right? You did it. Steel City became Renaissance City, right? Now then, I gotta. Now then, while we're on the subject of steel, no, be nice to him. Be nice to him. He's getting paid to do that, you know. But now that's not the kind of jobs I want to create if you elect me. Tonight we've got a great family here on the podium, and these are Pennsylvania people. There's a man of steel and a wife of steel here. I got to meet them after Desert Storm. Sergeant David Campbell was dying 3 weeks after the war ended. He was part of the Greensburg National Guard unit. His great wife, Gail Campbell, stand up here, Gail. Come here. Come here, man. Come here. And where's Major Sims? Major Sims.
And our minister's here,
Great.
too.
Huh?
Our minister is here, too.
Great.
Yes, Howard?
And the minister. That's right. Now, one Sunday afternoon, I got the word big time from the Campbell family that they called me, and the reason they called me is another man of steel, Henry Jamison, who was one of the first paratroopers to land at Normandy Beachhead, and believe me, there were no sissies there. He's my brother-in-law, and I'm very proud that he is my brother-in-law, and he had gone immediately to the Greensburg National Guard unit and said, if there's anything we can do to help, let us know. Well, I got a call from Major Sims, then I talked to Gail, talked to the minister. David Campbell. David, come on up here. Now, here they are. Now, here's a man, we're talking cold rolled stainless steel here. And here is a great, great woman of strength because her husband was dying and she decided she wasn't going to let him die. And the only reason I tell you this story, it's a beautiful story about them. They called. She wanted to go to the Middle East because they had told her David was going to die. She wanted to take their lovely daughters. Come on up. Wanted to take their daughters and her sister.
Her sister's down there.
And be with Dad in his final days. And as we were talking, I said, great, we'll get that arranged, but the real issue is to save him. She says, that's right. And I said, talking to Major Sims and Gail, I said, do you know the doctor's name? And they did. And they knew the doctor's telephone number. And I said, do you mind if I call him? So I called him in the Middle East. It was a direct dial, just like we'd call one another. He picked up the phone. Now, God bless Commander Wallace. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story, this is a society that works. Here is a Navy commander who was living in the hospital room with David Campbell trying to save him. I couldn't get a doctor to live with me, I'll tell you that, and I love a society where a doctor is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here is my kind of doctor. When I talked to him, he said, Mr. Perot, David Campbell could be saved, but I can't save him. He said, if I had the right team of specialists here, they could save him. Now, that's the kind of doctor I'd like to have working on me, right? Now, I said to Commander Wallace, I said, would you like to talk to the top trauma doctor in the United States? He said, I'd give anything to. I happened to know him. He happened to be at home. He called him immediately. 10 minutes later, he called back and said, Ross, my team could save him. We'll leave in the morning. Now, I like to hear that. My team will go halfway around the world. He says, but, by the time we get there, he'll be gone. He said, but the good news is there are 3 doctors in the Middle East that can save him. They're reserve doctors called up, genius doctors. I know their names. I don't even know what branch of the service they're in. He says, you get those guys in the room, they'll save him. Now, here is, the most beautiful part of the story is right here. She was determined that he was going to live. Now, it would be easy to say, who am I, just destroying the wind? My husband's halfway around the world. I feel so helpless and just fall apart. No, she wanted it fixed. Now, just like you want your country fixed. So there's a time. Okay, now. There's a National Command Center at the Pentagon that runs the Pentagon around the clock. There's either a Navy admiral or a general on duty as the duty officer. I called up, Admiral Peterson was on duty. I'll never forget the conversation. I went all through the whole story. I gave him the names of the 3 doctors. He never said a word. When I finished, he says, "Don't worry, Ross, I'll take care of it." And I knew by the way he said those words that David Campbell's life was very precious to him. And boy, oh boy, did he take care of it. Because 2 hours later, believe it or not, Dr. Weigelt called me and says, "Ross, I don't believe this. They found all 3 genius doctors. They're at David's side, and he's stabilized." Now, there's an interesting thing that happens when you're near death. One of the things you really need is the will to live. He had everything. He was stable, but he didn't have that fire back yet. And the nurses and Dr. Wallace tell the most beautiful story. A couple of days later, when these 3 walked in the room, that gleam was in his eye again, and he had the will to live, and the rest is history. Today, he's back at work in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Now, I like to strip away, you know, when you go through something that long, let's strip away all the excess stuff. Here's the reason he's back here in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, right here. This one wonderful woman who wouldn't let her husband die. So God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, can we agree that we want high-paying jobs in this country and not around the world? Can we agree that we don't all want to be plucking chickens for a living? Think about it. Now, let's get right down to brass tacks. Can we be a superpower if we don't make steel here? No, you can't. Do you agree with that fellow at the White House? It's an economic advisor to the president that said he didn't care whether we made potato chips or computer chips? Do you want your children to be working in the industries of tomorrow or the industries of yesterday? Tomorrow, right. Okay. Can you agree that we can't be a great nation unless we make things? Can you agree that just playing with money is not the way to be a great nation? You've got to manufacture, and by golly, nobody did it better at one time than this area right here, and we got to do it again. Now, if you like these trade agreements where we're shipping whole industries to countries that pay $1 an hour for labor, I'm not your man, I'll just tell you that. Now, for diplomatic reasons, as you know, we've shipped whole industries overseas, and there's an even worse situation. We've got foreign lobbyists running out of our ears, making $300,000 and $400,000 a year that used to be on the trade commissions, on the White House staff, on key congressional staffs. And I think that's wrong, and I think you should not be able, as a foreign country, to buy influence in this country. You buy that? All right. A man from Japan who is our friend said this to us. It's kind of like talking to one of your friends that's an alcoholic. He said, in Japan we think 10 years ahead, in America you think 10 minutes ahead. Let's go start thinking 15 years ahead and whip them all. He said, in Japan we make things. In the United States you just play with money. Now, we got to go back to making things, right? Not just playing with money. Okay. Now, there are a lot of folks telling you all day, every day, that if you vote for me, you're wasting your vote. And I guess if I was seeing the reaction here today, I'd try to say something like that to slow you down too. I suggest let me make a counter suggestion for you to think about. If you keep voting for business as usual in this country, you are wasting your vote. Then everybody says, Ross, how many states are you and your volunteers planning to win? All 50. You got it right there. We understand sports in our country. If you were competing in an athletic event, you'd compete to win them all, right? Now, here's the interesting part. In business, you and I compete all day, every day in an international Super Bowl, and we're competing for our jobs. Now, we don't have to watch sport to satisfy our competitive instincts. We can strap it on every morning and just go beat everybody in the world and put the words "Made in the USA" on it, and everybody will be standing in line to buy it one more time if we're doing it. If our primary job in this country is to rebuild our country and create jobs, doesn't it just make common sense for you all to hire somebody that's done it? Let me say, if you're going to have brain surgery, you wouldn't go to somebody that's never done a head job, would you? No. Okay. But in politics, right now, we're reaching out to people who don't understand how you make things work, how you make money, how you create jobs, how you put people to work, keep them to work. And more than anything else, they've forgotten the fact that they work for you. Now, how are we going to get all 50? It's very simple. If every one of you will get 5 more friends to vote, and those 5 will get 5 more to vote, we're going to have kind of chain letter voting here in the next 9 days. That's all we have to do. It's that simple. Just get that chain letter going and we're done. Don't write the letter, talk to them. Now, did you all enjoy the debates? Now, didn't you find it interesting that this just kind of cur dog that y'all put on the ballot did all right? See? You know, the only reason they let us on there is they thought I would embarrass you. And you've heard them say now they wish they hadn't let me be there, right? You know, it's pretty simple. You know what my edge was? It wasn't my good looks. It wasn't my beautiful speaking voice. I was speaking from the heart for you. That was my secret. Thank you. Now then, they all wanted to know. They all want to know. They sent people down and says, who coached Perot? How did they prep him? I went over to the barber shop. Just sat there with real people talking about real stuff, and by the time my haircut was over, I knew exactly what I had to say. Now you understand. See, I love the debates because I got to see part of it you didn't see. I showed up at the first debate, and my guy, I had sent 3 people up. 2 of them wondered why I sent them. Had 1 cellular phone to share. The president sent 350 people up. Clinton sent 200 people up. Each one of them had a 100 telephone line phone bank. We had 1 cellular phone. They had a lot of big arguments about how long the motorcade should be. They finally agreed on 48 cars apiece. Then turned to my guy and says, now, how big is Mr. Perot's motorcade? And he said, well, we just rented a car from Avis. We just got 1 car. would really love is they had a big dispute about who would get which dressing room. My guys said nothing when they finished. Said Ross doesn't care where he sits for an hour. But we worked that out by saying just whatever's left over, give it to us. Just going to sit there for an hour. But then in the last debate, we had a showstopper, and that is there was a chance that the president and the governor were going to see one another as they walked on stage, and they demanded that they build a big partition so that one could stand on one side and one could stand on the other side. And then it wasn't high enough, and they had to raise it. Now, that'll maybe help you understand when they got out on stage, they just said, well, I agree with Ross. I agree with Ross. Okay. Now, every time you all get rolling again, I get declared as crazy. You got declared as crazy, too, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Perot's crazy. Anybody that supports him is crazy. President's chief spokesman said I was a monster, and I says, is that Cookie Monster? They said, no, monster, Now, there's a little bit of panic up there. I think you're stirring things up, but that's good. They need to be stirred up. And the way things are going right now, after November, these fellows up there might say, they were crazy like a fox. So we'll see. We'll see. Then the question is, can we govern? That question pops up. Look, as long as there's you, the American people, and me working for you as your servant, my job is to do what you want done, and that's the way the system's supposed to work. And you tap those congressmen and senators on the shoulder, all you got to do is keep tapping them on the shoulder and say, fellas, here's what we want you to do, big time. And we'll look like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers used to look dancing across the stage. Now, the high point of the debate was, as I look back on it, the president was saying, I agree with Ross. Governor Clinton was saying, I would agree with Ross. I thought, I was saying, this is really nice. And then I realized, all these folks are wondering if we can govern. We broke gridlock, folks. They all agree with us, right? No, seriously, all it takes is you, the American people, me there as your servant. Now, as your servant, like in my companies, we all call one another by our first name. We all work with one another, but nobody works for anybody. But in this case, I work for you, and it's kind of goofy for you to call me Mr. Perot or Mr. President. I'm Ross, because I work for you. Keep it simple. Oh, it's going to be very different. The only reason we can't do anything is if all of you faded away after November and left me stuck up there by myself. I can't do it. I can't do it. But if you're out there, now here, everything we start to do, you say, boy, Perot, I can't take many more flip chart shows, then don't vote for me. Don't vote for me, because like when we come up with a new health care plan, you're going to know all about it before it hits you over the head. If we're going to be spending what used to be your money, we ought to tell you what we're going to spend it for, right? And how it's going to work. That's pretty simple. Now, I got one question here today. Do you have any question about my commitment to all of you? As I said the other night, I laid $60 million on the table to make sure I led up to my commitment to you to give you a world-class campaign. You've seen part of it. Are we on the way? Okay. Now, as you all know, but we got a big TV audience watching out there, I'm spending my money and nobody else's money because I don't want to belong to anybody but you. And in plain Texas talk, in plain Texas talk, I don't owe nobody nothing, but I owe you everything. Now, if you ever question my commitment, look at the commitment my family has made. They've had to endure terrible abuse through this period. That's part of the political process. It shouldn't be, but it is. I want to spend 1 minute telling you the reason why I dropped out on July. It's going to be on 60 Minutes tonight. I want you to hear it directly from me. I received a report of a high-level Republican meeting where they said, we have thrown everything we can make up on Perot, and he just keeps on coming and keeps going up in the polls. Isn't this guy sensitive to anything? And one person in the meeting unthinkingly said he adores his family. I got a report on that, and I filed it away. A couple of weeks later, I got a report that there was a plan to smear my daughter Carolyn, who was about to get married in August the 23rd, and believe it or not, disrupt the church service at her wedding. Now, I got that from a source away from government, and then about a week or 10 days later, I got a report from a person very close to the Republican process who said, Ross, I just cannot tolerate this. I have got to tell you, and it was identical. So I had 3 flares go up. Now, you saw Carolyn the other night on television. These children are too good to be true. She is a perfect lady. I adore them, and I could not allow my daughter's happiest day of her life, or one of them, to be ruined because of people who will do anything to win. Now, I looked the situation over. Now, and I realized that this was a risk I did not have to take. I could keep my commitment, my adoration to her, and I could keep my commitment to you, and I stepped back. And you kept putting us on the ballot in all 50 states. Now, every other member of the family knew exactly why I dropped out. We did not tell Carolyn because we didn't want to upset her. We wanted her wedding day to be perfect. When she got back from her wedding trip, I sat down and talked to her, and her first reaction was, the wedding's over, the honeymoon's over, get back in the race. Now, so I think you can understand that Carolyn has her mother's Pennsylvania strength and courage. Our challenge between now and November is to go for all 50, win all 50, and leave nothing on the table. Let me say one more thing about this incident regarding Carolyn. I don't want to sink to the level the rest of these people may or may not have sunk. I cannot prove that any of that happened. I just got these reports. It was a risk I could not take. Tonight, the Republicans will deny it. Leave it right there in your minds. Forget it. It has nothing to do with rebuilding our country, has nothing to do with building jobs, has nothing to do with paying off the debt and leaving the American dream for our children. Don't spend 5 more minutes fretting about it. That's history. It's done. If 60 Minutes had never reported it, you would have never heard it from me because it's irrelevant to fixing our country's problems, right? Okay. Put it behind you. If you elect me, or when we sweep the 50 states on November the 4th, I got to go to work November the 4th because I'm going to give you, it's not going to be the first 100 days after we're sworn in. We're going to put the task forces together. We're going to be bringing you plans before Christmas, and we're going to let you know precisely what we're going to do when we get in. But you say, well, now, Ross, that's moving pretty fast. Every good thing I've ever done in my life, we zeroed in on, we focused on, we got it done. Now, the greatest work I and my people have ever done is when we take a high-talent team, just zero in like a laser and nail it and move on to the next problem. Now, if you don't want action, you don't want me. Because now I want to make sure it's very carefully done. You don't just don't want to go shooting from the hip. You got to make these programs work right for you. And I do not mean to be irreverent when I say this, but it makes a point. God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, right? It doesn't take forever to do something worthwhile, is my point. So, we just move the ball, quit talking about it. Now, you're going to be deluged with chart shows while we explain all this to you. But there'll be one change. I won't have to use my voodoo stick pointer anymore. That's right. We'll burn that on November the 4th. We're beyond voodoo and trickle down back to reality. I will be all ears as your president. There they are. Wouldn't you like to have somebody that you put up there to work for you listen to you? It's your country. It's so simple. It's your country. Now, as I said during the debates, and I'll say it again, as a matter of principle, as lucky as I've been in this country, I would never take a penny of compensation for the honor of serving you. Now, that keeps my head clear. I'm up there for one purpose. That's you. That's you. I'm there as your servant. I am Ross. You're the boss. Okay? Now, as much as we're spending on television, there's no way I'm going to have a crowd like this and not tell you when the next TV show is. Monday night, 1 hour on ABC, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to have more shows. We're going to have more shows all through the week. We'll keep you posted on those. We have a terrific show on creating jobs and building businesses. I want you to see that one for sure. That won't be on Monday night, but I'll make sure you know when it's coming on. On Election Eve night, we've got 30 minutes on each of the 3 networks. And we'll be pounding home the message that you want delivered to the American people. And if you've got the chain voting system in work, then we'll be going after all 50 on Tuesday. Now then, during the day Tuesday, if you're sick of this Texas accent, don't turn on your radio, particularly during drive time, because we'll be reminding everybody today's the day. It's time to, put up or just keep going the way we are. Now, once we're in, and we're in then November the 4th, we're going to lift up the hood. We'll be down there working on the engine the morning of November the 4th. We'll have a who's who of Congress, everybody into it, and we'll be moving. Now, as we go through this, say about a year from now when you're kind of tired, and you say, boy, this is a lot of work, look at your children and grandchildren. That'll get your battery charged again. And the next morning we'll hit the field again. Now, never forget Lech Walesa. One shipyard worker in Poland thought he could change the world. And by golly, he did. You're not helpless, you're not nobody until in here you decide you're helpless and nobody, right? Okay, we got to kill any of that that's still alive. We'll get Orkins out to work on that. Just get rid of that because one person can make an incredible difference. And never forget this story about Lech Walesa. The Russians beat him up, knocked him unconscious, threw him over the wall from the shipyard. It's a beautiful story. He woke up. His first thought was, will they kill my wife and children? And then he said before he knew it, he had climbed back over the wall and was fighting them again. Now that's the kind of spirit it'll take to rebuild this country. Let's just get down to basics here. There's a neuropsychologist from Boston that's been widely quoted since the debates that said they counted the number of times each candidate blinked during the debates. And the number of times you blink is an indication of stress. Bush blinked 53 times a minute, Clinton blinked 47 times a minute, and this strange duck you picked blinked 7 times a minute. Now, see, I don't know if that means anything or not. See, I'm like Will Rogers, all I know is what I read in the papers. But wouldn't you like to have a tough old bird up there that when the going gets tough and it push comes to shove, is not going to blink on you? Okay, I promise you I won't. Do you think we can do it? Are you ready to suck it up, strap it on, and go for it? Now, everybody says we are spoilers. We can't be spoilers. We didn't create that mess. It was spoiled when we started, folks. You and I are just a repair crew going in after the earthquake. But just think how much fun it will be. Now, just look back on your life. Think of the most difficult things you ever did that you did well. And there was a lot of pain and sacrifice as you did it. And I'll bet when you sit around at night and tell stories, those are the stories you tell, right? Those are the stories you tell. Would you rather fix this problem or hit the beach at Normandy like Henry James in World War II? I'll take this problem any day, right? Now, this audience probably has a lot of people like Henry, veterans who put their lives on the line and says, Ross, we've done both. Well, that's right, and I'm counting on you fellows first because you understand that this is child's play compared to what you did. Anytime you're not being shot at, it's a vast relief, right, David? Well, listen, if you want to do it, we can do it. If you want to do it, we will do it. And every step of the way, just remember, I'm Ross, and you're the boss. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ross Perot in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, his second stop of the day. Earlier, he was in New Jersey. We now take you live to Sterling Heights, Michigan, where Governor Bill Clinton began speaking about 2 minutes ago as our Election 92 coverage continues on this Sunday.